It's over, man. It's a wrap. Dillon Gabriel is done with the Cleveland Browns. This was an awful pick. This was a top 100 draft pick who is now about to be out of there for a late round pick, like a 7th round pick. This is nuts. Dillon Gabriel and his fiancée, y'all both can crash out.
That reaction right there tells you everything you need to know about how this situation went down. Dillon Gabriel's fiancée had plenty to say on social media last offseason when the Shedeur Sanders rumors were swirling. She was vocal, she was confident, she was defending her man's position with the Cleveland Browns, and now, complete silence, because the nightmare scenario they mocked actually happened. Dillon Gabriel, a 3rd round pick from the 2025 draft, is about to be shipped out of Cleveland for basically nothing. We're talking a 7th round pick, maybe a conditional 6th if they're lucky. This is one of the most embarrassing quarterback evaluations in recent Browns history, and that's saying something for a franchise that cycled through 26 starting quarterbacks since 1999.
Okay, here it says Mary Kay Cabot of Cleveland.com delivered a harsh assessment of Gabriel's standing with the organization in her latest Q&A, acknowledging that the 3rd round pick has upside but isn't part of the starting equation heading into 2026. She said, "I know the Browns still like Gabriel and believe he has good upside potential, but he started 6 games for them. He's not really in the mix to start for them this season." Cabot said if they don't trade him, which they're open to, they keep him as a developmental QB on a rookie contract who can start games for them if necessary.
Mary Kay Cabot just delivered the death blow in her latest Q&A column for Cleveland.com. And here's what makes this brutal. She's not some hot take artist looking for clicks. Cabot is one of the most connected Browns insiders in the business. When she says Dillon Gabriel is not really in the mix to start for them this season, that's not speculation. That's organizational reality leaking through the cracks. The Browns spent a 3rd round pick on this kid less than a year ago. He started 6 games for them in 2025, and they're already shopping him like a rental car. They regret buying. Think about what that means. In the modern NFL, teams protect their draft capital like it's gold. 3rd round picks are supposed to be foundational pieces, guys you develop for 3 to 4 years minimum before making a judgment. The Browns are cutting bait after 1 season. That's not just admitting a mistake, that's screaming it from the rooftops.
Crash out. She can go crash out all she wants. She was talking crazy on social media last year when it came to this whole Shedeur situation, and now look at things. My man Earl the Pearl talked about how Dillon Gabriel probably won't be on this roster going forward. Let's take a listen.
The fact that, she mentioned Dillon Gabriel, and there's a strong possibility that, Dillon Gabriel might end up traded. You kind of said to me that kind of creates a narrative. Okay, the plan.
She opened my eyes to something.
What's that?
Because to this point, maybe this is my fault. You can say it's my fault. If you want to say it's my fault, give us a call. It's fine. To this point, I have been operating under this premise of man, they're not going to draft a quarterback. They got.
Now here's where this gets interesting from a roster construction standpoint. Earl of Pearl, one of the sharper Browns analysts out there, broke down something that most people missed. The Browns currently have 3 quarterbacks under contract: Deshaun Watson, Shedeur Sanders, and Dillon Gabriel. If they add a quarterback in free agency, which all signs point to them doing, that puts them at 4 quarterbacks heading into the offseason program. Standard operating procedure for most NFL teams. But here's the thing. If they want to draft another quarterback, even a late-round developmental guy like Taylor Green from Arkansas, somebody's gotta go. You can't carry 5 quarterbacks through training camp. It's not practical. You need those roster spots for position battles at other positions. So the math is simple. Dillon Gabriel becomes the odd man out by default. And that's exactly what Mary Kay Cabot hinted at when she said the Browns are open to trading him. That's front office speak for we're actively shopping this guy. Please call us with offers. They're not waiting for teams to come to them. They're making the calls themselves.
If they add a guy in free agency, or if they were to trade for an Anthony Richardson per se, let's just throw that example out there. Or let's throw Kyler Murray out there as somebody that they maybe sign because he's going to be a free agent when they cut him. We do need to talk about Kyler at some point too, and the whole idea of everyone just all these people being out on every quarterback that isn't Sam Darnold, like Lyman was arguing. We'll get to that coming up, but if they add a quarterback during free agency, that puts them at the 4 quarterback that they normally carry in the offseason. But all of a sudden, they might look and say, all right, well, we don't necessarily think Dylan's a fit. And we added this other guy that we feel like is more of a fit. And we want him to be part of the competition or whatever. We need to trade Dylan Gabriel or get rid of Dylan Gabriel in some capacity. If they do that, if they somehow manage to move Dylan Gabriel, now all of a sudden, like,
Let's talk about what went wrong here, because this isn't just about Dylan Gabriel being a bad player. The evaluation process was flawed from the start. When the Browns drafted Gabriel in the 3rd round, they were betting on his college production translating to the NFL. At Oregon, he put up massive numbers, over 49,000 passing yards in his college career between Oklahoma and Oregon, Heisman Trophy finalist, all the accolades you could want. But here's what the Browns missed. Gabriel succeeded in college because of elite speed at the skill positions and scheme advantages that don't exist in the NFL. He was operating in one of the most quarterback-friendly systems in college football, throwing to receivers who created separation instantly against inferior competition. When you put him in an NFL offense, running Kevin Stefanski's system that requires quarterbacks to process complex coverages and make tight window throws, the limitations became obvious immediately. Gabriel's arm strength is average at best. His mobility, which was supposed to be a selling point, didn't show up in those 6 starts. He looked stiff in the pocket, uncomfortable under pressure, and unable to create plays outside of structure. Compare that to Shedeur Sanders, who's not going to run a 4.4 40-yard dash, but showed genuine pocket mobility and escapability at Colorado. The contrast is jarring.
That then feels like you now open this other spot, because they're going to carry 4, to see, okay, what quarterbacks are out there. Do we like a guy enough that, like she mentioned, Drew Aller, that we would take a Drew Aller maybe like in a later round and try to draft and develop him, whatever. Like, I'm now my eyes are open to the possibilities of that, because that was kind of operating on the premise that, like, the 3 guys that are here are going to be here when training camp opens, and they're going to add 1 guy either via free agency or the draft to sort of be in there. Now I'm like, what if they both sign a guy and draft?
And this is where Kevin Stefanski's quarterback preferences become critical to understanding the situation. Stefanski has a type. He wants quarterbacks who can operate in play-action heavy systems, who can move the pocket, who can extend plays with their legs when the initial read isn't there. That's why Baker Mayfield had his best season under Stefanski in 2020. That's why they were so interested in Shedeur Sanders, despite the media circus that comes with him. Dylan Gabriel doesn't fit that archetype at all. He's a traditional pocket passer who needs clean pockets and time to survey the field. That works in college when you have a dominant offensive line and receivers running wide open. In the NFL, especially behind the Browns' offensive line that's been inconsistent at best, it's a recipe for disaster. Taylor Green, the Arkansas quarterback they mentioned, is 6'6" and ran a 4.38 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine. That's the kind of athletic profile that fits what Stefanski wants to do offensively. He's not a day 1 or even day 2 draft pick, but as a late round developmental guy, that makes infinitely more sense than trying to force Dylan Gabriel into a role he's not built for.
So the reality of the situation is Deshaun Watson, Shedeur Sanders cannot be the only 2 quarterbacks on this roster. No. You need at least 3 quarterbacks on this roster. Newsflash, quarterbacks get hurt. You need depth at that position. The Browns drafting a quarterback in a later rounds is not the most far-fetched idea, right? Where you go, Arkansas? You know the quarterback I'm talking about. His name is escaping me right now. But the kid who measured 6'6" at the NFL Combine, ran like a 4.3 40, big dude. That's a guy whose name that you have not heard much of.
Now let's address the elephant in the room, Shedeur Sanders, because that's really what this entire situation is about. The Browns didn't just move on from Dylan Gabriel in a vacuum. They moved on because they found someone they believe is genuinely better, someone who fits their system, someone who has the tools to potentially be a franchise quarterback. And here's what makes this awkward. Dylan Gabriel's fiancée was all over social media last offseason when the Shedeur rumors first started circulating. She was posting about how Dylan was going to prove everyone wrong, how he was ready for the opportunity, how the Browns made the right choice. There was a level of confidence that in hindsight looks wildly misplaced. The Browns organization clearly sees Shedeur as the future. Mary Kay Cabot specifically mentioned that they're going to lean into Shedeur here and give him a real chance to win the starting job in training camp. That's not lip service. That's organizational commitment. When you're leaning into a rookie quarterback, you're building your offense around his strength. You're giving him first-team reps. You're investing developmental resources into his success. Here's what makes this situation particularly brutal for Dillon Gabriel. The Browns aren't just moving on from him quietly, they're doing it publicly through one of the most connected beat reporters in the league, while simultaneously pumping up his replacement. That's organizational messaging. They want teams around the league to know Gabriel is available. They want to create a market, even if it's a limited one. But here's the problem. What's Dillon Gabriel's trade value right now? He's a third-round pick who started 6 games, showed nothing that would make teams excited, and is clearly being discarded by the team that drafted him. That screams bust to every general manager in the league. Maybe a team like the Titans or the Raiders, who are desperate for quarterback depth, throws Cleveland a 7th-round pick just to take a flyer on him. Maybe someone offers a conditional 6th that becomes a 5th if he starts 8 games. But that's the ceiling. Compare that to what the Browns invested, a 3rd-round pick, which is typically valued around a mid-2nd-round pick in trade value charts. They're about to recoup maybe 5% of that investment. That's not just a bad return, that's organizational malpractice. And here's the thing about Andrew Berry, the Browns' general manager. He's supposed to be one of the smarter executives in the league. He's an Ivy League guy, analytics-focused, process-driven. But this Dillon Gabriel pick looks like a panic move, a reach for a quarterback because they felt pressure to address the position. When your process-driven GM makes an emotional decision, this is what happens. You waste premium draft capital on a player who doesn't fit your system and has to be discarded within a year. The Fiancée situation adds another layer of awkwardness to this entire mess. Because when you're a professional athlete's partner and you're vocal on social media, you're essentially putting yourself in the public conversation. That's fine when things are going well. But when your partner is about to be traded for a 7th-round pick after being benched in favor of a rookie, suddenly those confident posts from last offseason look really bad. She was defending Dillon against the Shedeur comparisons. She was suggesting the Browns made the right choice. She was projecting confidence in his ability to win the starting job. And now, complete radio silence. Because what can she possibly say at this point? The nightmare scenario she was mocking actually came true. Shedeur Sanders is the guy. Dillon Gabriel is the afterthought being shopped for spare parts. Now let's talk about what happens next, because this situation has implications beyond just Dillon Gabriel's career. The Browns are about to enter one of the most critical off-seasons in franchise history. They have Deshaun Watson, who's owed $130 million guaranteed but has been one of the worst starting quarterbacks in football since joining Cleveland. They have Shedeur Sanders, a rookie with superstar potential but also significant question marks about his ability to handle NFL pressure. And they're about to add another quarterback in free agency, possibly someone like Anthony Richardson or even Kyler Murray if the Cardinals cut him. That's a messy quarterback room. Multiple guys who could theoretically start, multiple egos to manage, multiple development tracks to balance. And in the middle of all that chaos, Dillon Gabriel is the odd man out. The guy who doesn't fit, who doesn't have the tools, who doesn't have organizational support. Travis Switzer, another Browns analyst, mentioned something interesting this week. He talked about how the organization is going to lean on Shedeur's mobility more than people expect. They're going to design plays specifically around his ability to escape pressure and make plays outside of structure. That's a tacit admission that the offensive line still isn't good enough to provide consistent protection, so they need a quarterback who can create on his own. Dillon Gabriel can't do that. He's not mobile enough, not instinctive enough, not dynamic enough. So even if Deshaun Watson continues to struggle, even if Shedeur Sanders hits a rookie wall, Dillon Gabriel still isn't the answer. He's just a guy taking up a roster spot until they can find someone to take him off their hands. The comparison to other recent Browns quarterback failures is inevitable. Johnny Manziel, Brandon Weeden, Brady Quinn, Cody Kessler, Deshaun Kaiser. The list goes on and on. Dillon Gabriel is about to join that ignominious group. Another high draft pick wasted on a quarterback who never had a real chance to succeed because the evaluation was flawed from the start. But here's what makes this different. The Browns actually have a potential franchise quarterback on the roster now. Shedeur Sanders might be the guy who breaks the curse. He's got the arm talent, the processing speed, the competitive fire. If he develops the way the organization hopes, this entire Dillon Gabriel chapter becomes a footnote. A costly footnote, but a footnote nonetheless. The question becomes, was breaking those stories worth it for Dillon Gabriel's fiancée? Was the social media confidence, the public defense of her man, the mockery of the Shador comparisons worth the embarrassment that's coming now? Because make no mistake, when Dillon Gabriel gets traded for a 7th round pick, the internet is going to remember those posts. The receipts are going to get pulled, and it's going to be brutal. So here's where we are. Dillon Gabriel, a 3rd round pick from 2025, is about to be traded for essentially nothing. His fiancée, who was vocal about his potential last offseason, has gone completely silent. The Browns are openly shopping him, while simultaneously building their offense around Shador Sanders. And the entire situation is a reminder that in the NFL, confidence without performance means absolutely nothing. What do you think happens to Dillon Gabriel's career from here? Does he catch on somewhere as a backup and carve out a journeyman career? Or is this the beginning of the end, a cautionary tale about college production not translating to the NFL? Drop your predictions in the comments. And if you think the Browns made the right call moving on this quickly, or if you think that they should give him another year to develop, let me know. Hit that like button, subscribe for more Browns coverage, and I'll see you in the next one.